So we're going to be jumping right in about communicating your A&R story. And the way that we'll structure it is I'm going to race through this presentation and turn it over to Dan for his presentation. And we're going to go on an interactive tour through Dan's Instagram account. And his is one of the most effective Instagram accounts I've seen in terms of communicating a story and engaging followers. And so we'll be doing that. Don't worry about taking notes because we've got PDFs of our presentations as well as a tip sheet up on the Learning and Development site right next to the link to this webinar. Okay, so this is actually module 4 of communicating your A&R story. And it's part of a larger series, and it was basically inspired by the idea that communicating our stories as researchers and educators is absolutely essential to our work as extension. And increasingly, this involves digital technologies. And so basically, A&R has developed this series of webinars, and there'll be more, and we'll be repeating them, to help people become more comfortable and effective, and about teaching them about the tools and the social platforms that will advance extension work. So today's Instagram, next week is Facebook. February 4th through 8th, we're actually going to be doing a little daily webinar that will help you create a communication strategy for your program or your research project. And archived, we've got blogging basics, Twitter basics, a webinar on LinkedIn, and then a second blogging one. And we'll be repeating those live throughout the spring. Okay, so my story is I'm a cooperative extension advisor based in Ventura County. I've previously been a 4-H advisor, a master gardener advisor, county director. I was a strategic initiative leader for the Sustainable Food Systems Initiative. But for about 10 years, I've been doing a lot of work in digital communications based in blogging. And I got a Kellogg Fellowship, and that covered 2 years. And then I went over to UCOP on an assignment for a few years to develop a brand platform for them called the UC Food Observer, which is part of the Global Food Initiative that Janet Napolitano launched in 2014. And that's now an A&R brand. And so central to all my work for the last 10 years has been working on blogs and social media. And so I'm now working as a digital advisor in communications in food and agriculture and extension education. And I hope that you'll go take a look and follow the social accounts for UC Food Observer. And one of the things that's really engaged me in using social technologies in general for my extension work is this kind of idea that was really articulated well by a respondent to a Pew Research survey. And if you want to learn about sort of like the data behind social media, Pew Research has a wonderful technology and society research portal, and they do a lot of research about social technologies and the implications of their use in the United States and internationally. And this, in particular, the stickiness and value of a connected life will be far too strong for a significant number of people to have the will or means to disconnect. Like it or not, we're probably stuck with and on digital technologies, but we can use them really effectively for our work. So no product is made today, no person moves today, nothing is collected, analyzed, or communicated without some digital technology being an integral part of it. And I think that's true. And I've been really intrigued with Instagram as a platform for the last year or so and seeing how it's moving in a different way than some other social technology platforms, and the kind of engagement that is possible on Instagram is pretty intriguing. So today, really quickly, why use Instagram, some basics and terms, some of the new features that could really provide an innovative way for you to do extension delivery and education, what you can do, and then we'll do the interactive session and Q&A. So Instagram is a mobile photo, video sharing, social network, and an app owned by Facebook. Now, you can use the mobile app to shoot and post photos and video. You can do live video. Like Facebook, you have, or Twitter, you have followers and you can follow other people. There's a desktop version for browsing, which Dan will be showing you today, but posting is done on the mobile app. And it's got some really cool features. So you can do actually photo editing on Instagram, and you can, there are a couple of dozen filters that you can use. You can also take a photo and, go to the keyboard and, your little mobile keyboard and type things or add emojis so that you can add text to the photos. It's pretty cool. So only Facebook and YouTube have more logins than Instagram. And there's a significant crossover for a couple of reasons. So Facebook owns Instagram. So there's crossover there. And if you're really active on Facebook and you want to, you can leverage that to sort of move content, photos, and messages back and forth across the two platforms. YouTube is really interesting. 95% of people with Instagram accounts use YouTube a lot. And so for me, what that means is that if you have an extension program like Dan's that really comes to life via photos and video with what I call informed text, like good captions and little short good bites on your post, YouTube might be a good place for you to go as well. So this is not going to surprise any of us. 71% of 18 to 24-year-olds in this country use Instagram, and they're logging on daily. 33% of Instagram users are between 30 and 49 years old. So, for some of our extension programs, that's a good audience cohort. 70% of US users have a post-secondary education, and 25% of smartphone owners use Instagram. So again, why use it? It's got great photo editing. It's got the stories feature where you can actually connect photos and video and make them into a narrative story with different sort of episodes or chapters. And Dan has, I think, done some work with that, and we can show you some other accounts today that do that well. It's really ideal for extension work. And I could see a possibility that, say that you were in the Master Gardener program and you wanted to, you were doing some little demonstration on propagation, that you could basically line your images up with the instructions written on them very simply and put them into a single story and basically have a demonstration right there for users. And I've seen people who are gardeners do that on Instagram. There's also a live broadcast option, which I think is really exciting. And it's a visual platform which attracts people and engages people, but it's got a great ability in the body of the post for you to sort of microblog and use searchable hashtags. So the platform is growing rapidly, so it may be a good place for you to be depending on your program. The engagement and conversion rate dwarfs other social platforms, and there's something about the visual nature of it. And so it's becoming very popular for e-commerce, and it's for many corporations, it's sort of becoming essential for brand building. It's a very sort of personal method of reaching people. It's also a search engine. So you can, in the search bar, search people. You can search hashtags, which could be trending topics. You can search places, and you can also search top, which are the things that are sort of trending. It's a fun, creative, and a great way to reach people. So some basic features, and we'll show you in the interactive section, is the home functions as basically like a timeline or a news feed. In that way, it's really similar to Facebook or Twitter. There's a profile section where you can write about you. And that section can be customized, and it can feature media like a link to your website. And if you're going to use Instagram or you're using it, make sure to use that section for all it's worth and invest time there, because that's the place where you can use social links to direct people to other places that you want them to see. So at the bottom of the Instagram, the bottom of your page on Instagram, there's a plus key. And the plus key enables you to add a photo from your smartphone photo library, or take a photo, or shoot a video real time. It's really neat. It's a pretty powerful photo and video editor. Again, there's also the ability to add text and emojis to photos or in the stories feature. It's really a fun camera editor. So there are also some newer features worth mentioning that give this social platform some real heft. So I mentioned the stories feature. So the stories feature, they've developed this on Instagram in response to Snapchat. And the stories will stay up for 24 hours, but you can archive and save them. And they basically serve as a secondary feed. And you can load your stories up at the top of a profile once they're archived. And they're like these great little circles with an image on top of them, and you can label them. And it becomes
Rose?
a great place to keep content front and center.
Rose?
Yeah.
Are you sharing your PowerPoint now?
Yes.
I don't see it.
You don't see it? Oh my gosh. Okay, well, this is really odd because it says that it's sharing. Okay. It says that it's sharing. Let me try again. Okay. Now can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's really weird because it said that it was sharing, and I don't know if it's because we have multiple people sharing or not. So, so that's okay. Sorry about that. So anyway, one of the other new features that's really interesting is it's got, Instagram has developed what other platforms have developed, which is called an alternative text description. So the artificial intelligence will actually gather information about your photo and the text that you've entered as a caption. And that enables people with visual impairments who have screen readers to basically get an idea about what you've posted. And so I think that's a really interesting aspect of the platform. There also have been some new features that are profile changes, things like including mutual followers like Facebook. You can develop a close friends list. So if I were using my Instagram account for extension education, I might use that close friends list to develop a targeted list of followers. There are also some time management tools, because one of the things about Instagram is people really like to check in a lot of times a day. So you can actually, if you're worried about spending too much time, you can set up some time management things where it will alert you if you've spent more than 30 minutes on the platform or something like that. And that can be handy. There's ability to load native video from your mobile device, and you can do a video chat from your direct messages. So it's almost like FaceTime. It's kind of cool. So before jumping into any social platform, I always want to encourage people to ask, why am I doing this? Why do I want to be on this platform? What's the value for being on the platform? What do I want to communicate and share? How much time do I have to devote to developing my presence on the platform? If you're already using the platform, I think some questions to ask were, how can I use a powerful tool like Instagram with all these great features more effectively? So there's some things that you can do that we'll show you in the interactive session. You could consider using the interface with Facebook, because that will help you move things back and forth, and there's a certain element of efficiency to it. You want to be authentic, be informative, add value, listen, engage with people. Use some of the features like the stories. It's kind of scary, but do it. It's really a good way to reach people. So really quickly, so before we go explore Instagram, remember the PowerPoints are in PDF, which is good since you didn't get to see my first 10 slides on the A&R Learning and Development page. Another thing too is I'm available to work with you as a resource. So if you want to learn more about blogging or Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, or you have ideas and you want to run them by someone, feel free to text me or email me. My cell phone is here, 805-794-1665. You can email me. I can help. I want to help you. I will make time. That's part of my job, is to help you in any way that I can. You can also tweet me. You can DM me on Twitter at UC Food Observer. You can find me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. And I look forward to hearing from you. All right, so Dan's up.
All right, we'll see if I can share my screen here. Good morning, everybody. So a little bit of my background, if I can, there we go. I've been an advisor here in the Sierra Foothills for just under 2 years. Prior to that, I'd been a community education specialist in the Placer, Nevada office, and worked for a year as the herdsman at the Sierra Foothill Research and Extension Center. And then outside of my UC life, my family and I have a small-scale commercial sheep operation as well. And so some of what we'll talk about today is related to that. So I got started, initially we did a lot of direct marketing with our sheep business, sold lamb and wool directly. And so I started Instagram as a way to kind of market what we did with our ranch, and more as a personal account. What really took off for me is that I started a project, I think in the fall of 2015. I decided that because Instagram was such a great way to kind of microblog and share photographs, that I was going to do one picture of something to do with our sheep operation every day for a year. And I tagged that with the hashtag sheep365. And it kind of just started as a very informal way to share something. I realized about 2 or 3 weeks in that I was telling a long story in very short bits. And so that helped me kind of figure out what I was going to post and how I was going to caption the posts, because it became a really great way to provide some public education and awareness. The other thing that happened in that, and I think has carried forward in the other Instagram things that I've done since, is that it built this sense of community. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. But there was a community of sheep producers all over the world that were just starting to use this same hashtag, sheep365. And it provided some connections that I wasn't even aware of in terms of learning from each other. And I think there's some real value in that for those of us that are working with clientele as well. And then lastly, that project led actually to a photo exhibit that our local Arts Council put on, which was really fun to have sheep pictures up in Auburn for about a month and a half. I since experimented a little bit with video blogging. I did a project last year where I did a 1-minute video every week for the whole year of something going on with sheep, which was fun. And it was fun to kind of experiment with video as part of that. And now it's really become a hybrid account. Since I've been an advisor, I debated about whether I wanted to have 2 different accounts, one for my personal work and one for UC Cooperative Extension, but it has worked well for me to have that be a hybrid account. So my handle is @FlyingMule. And I link my Instagram account to Facebook, as Rose said, but I also link it to Twitter, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. I don't use a scheduling app like Hootsuite or something like that. All of the posts that I put on Instagram are reasonably spontaneous from my phone. I spend 13 to 15 minutes a day on the platform, and that's both posting information and responding to other posts. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I think that's something to think about as well. The hashtags that I use that allow people to search for particular things are largely those on the screen there. And, Sheet 365 is still something I use. A number of us are using Rangelands 365. And then I use Sierra Foothills because it kind of puts some place-based searching ability in what I do as well. And then I also look to follow other interesting accounts, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. But I think reciprocation is a way to build followers that can be really important. So why not 2 accounts? I just reread one of my favorite books, Young Men and Fire by Norman MacLean. And he said in that book, there's no use in trying to eliminate all that is personal in order to be scientific. And so for me, my personal work with my own sheep is definitely a crossover with my professional work. And here's just a screenshot of something that's both personal and professional that I think has been generated some interesting discussion about pasture management and range management. I think the pictures have to be interesting, and I think the filter function on Instagram is really fun. There's some really interesting things you can do with the filters and with photo editing. Not all of my pictures are interesting, but I think that helps draw people into the rest of the story that you're trying to tell in your posts. This is a couple of young ladies, 3 young ladies from the UC Rangelands lab that came to visit puppies this summer. And so being creative about how you use some of those hashtags is pretty fun too. Tagging other users. So in this case, Kelsey DeRose and Grace Woodmancy, who are in this picture, are also on Instagram. And so I can tag them and extend my reach. I use it to share with my other social media accounts. I think it drives traffic to some of those other formats, and for me, it saves time. I don't have to do multiple things. I also think that whether it's a personal post or a work post, humor is a really good way to draw people in. And I think in light of that, some of my short videos, I make fun of myself and do a sheep herder weather report whenever there's something going on in our weather, and people seem to enjoy that and give me a hard time about it when I see them in person. I think like any other format, giving photo credit, if you use somebody else's photo, is really important. Instagram posts don't work well as a link to other websites. And Rose mentioned using your profile to provide those links is a really important tool. I do put some links in there from time to time, but mostly I try to drive that traffic to Facebook or Twitter that do have live links to other media. So I do a couple of things. Extension activities. These are just some screenshots. The two, the old photo and then the photo of the young woman holding a lamb is one post with two photos, and you can post multiple photos or photos and video all at the same time. But I think that's, for me, that's been an interesting way to kind of share what we're doing with extension activities. I also share information about research projects. I've got a project going on right now looking at livestock guardian dog behavior. And while we don't have a lot of results yet, it's been interesting to share that process with other folks, and actually has inspired some potential citizen science approaches to this particular question. But that's been fun as well. And then for me, I think one of the things that's been really instructive is that sharing the good and the bad has been valuable. And just a little bit about this picture on the far left, and if I offend anybody with a dead sheep, I apologize. But this was a sheep in our operation that was killed by a predator, and it generated a fair bit of traffic and interest on Instagram. It generated a huge amount of peer-to-peer sharing on Facebook. And I think that in the kind of work that we do in extension is really valuable in kind of generating opportunities for people to share questions and perspectives on a variety of things. That for me was really instructive. And then lastly, I think it really can build community. So I think engaging posts that encourage questions and encourage other people to share information are really valuable. This is a screenshot of a video that I posted last year. And I want to just tell a real quick story about this. Through my Sheep 365 project, I started following another sheep producer in the Dorset region of England. And last winter, she posted a picture of these little lamb raincoats called Lamb Max that she was using about the same time of year that we were lambing. And one of the challenges for us in our sheep operation is keeping newborn lambs alive if we get inclement weather in February and March. And so I asked her where she got these raincoats. Within 7 days of when I asked her where she got them, the company in England had shipped me a supply of them, and we used them on our own lambs last year and probably saved a dozen or so lambs during stormy weather. And that all came about because we had this community of folks on Instagram that were sharing information. And that to me is that's worth the 10 minutes or 20 minutes a day that I spend on the platform just to have that kind of community sharing. And so with that, I think that's my last slide. Yeah. All right. So now I think we're going to go to the interactive part. Is that right, Rose?
Yeah. And by the way, people are asking really good questions on the chat. So I am making a note that what we'll do is we'll capture the transcript of the chat, and I'll edit it, and then we'll have a really good Q&A piece that we'll have up as a PDF with this presentation, because we're getting great questions.
I'm looking at questions now. So let me go, let's go to, this is on my desktop. And so this is more of a way just to kind of look at some things rather than necessarily where I would post to. I post exclusively from my phone. But just to give you an example, this is my profile. And I think I'm still learning how to use this more effectively. Right now it links to my personal blog. I'm going to add a link to my UC blog as well. But from this page, you can kind of see some of the things that that I've posted recently. This is from a workshop that we had over the weekend and a research project that we're starting. with UC Davis. Let's see here. You can go through and actually edit your profile here from your desktop. I do most of that on the phone primarily, but there's opportunities to do that as well. Lynn, if I can find Lynn's. Some other really fun ones to follow. If I can find them here. Oh, we'll go to this one. This is another sheep producer. In California, Ryan Mahoney from Amy Livestock, which is down in Dixon. Ryan does some great things. He's actually in New Orleans right now and sharing information about the American Sheep Industry Association. But he posts some pretty fun things, but also tells a story. And I think that's part of what is important in what he does, is that he's always thinking about telling a story. Rose, were there some other? You want to share your screen? You want to pull your stuff up? I'll make a post on mine as you're talking.
Okay, let me share my screen again. Okay, desktop. And then let me go. So hang on again. You know, Dan, I'm having trouble sharing. Can you guys see my desktop?
Yeah, we can see the end of your slides.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Instagram. And any questions that I missed, I'll go through and answer. Okay, so one of the things that I really want to stress is it's really important to use the two-factor authentication. And I'm going to tell you a sad but true story. So I had a Victory Grower Instagram account, and it wasn't like as good as Dan's, but I liked it, and it had some good stuff on it. And my old email got hacked in September. And the way that I knew was within about half an hour of hacking my email, they hijacked my Instagram account. And it was a Russian IP, and Instagram couldn't do anything, and they wouldn't do anything. So unless you're like a really famous person, they won't help you recover your account. So I now use that two-factor authentication, and it's really, really important to do that, because especially if you're, you know, doing an account that's not only personal, but you don't want that to get hijacked or lost. So, okay, so this is my new kind of really lame, boring account. And let's see, I'm not seeing my stories here. So Dan, you may have to see it from yours, because I don't see it here. I posted a little thing earlier about how terrified I was to do this. But here would be an example of a story. And so 17 weeks ago, I posted this picture of this like new puppy, but I can add to it if I want. So really quickly, let's look at the authorized apps. You could add apps here. I don't have any right now. The only authorized sharing I have is basically Facebook. Okay, so let's do her history land. Okay, so this is a grad student that I've mentored at UC Santa Barbara, and she's a U.S. historian, and that's actually what I am, and so that's one of the reasons that I mentored her. And so Sasha is doing a really interesting area of research. So what she's doing is she basically is inspired by how Disney presents U.S. history. And so she's created something called the Enchanted Archives. And this account is fantastic because what she does is she takes really cool popular culture things about Disneyland, and she often invites people to contribute their images. And I've seen her collect and add to her archives and then post images that people are sending in from 50 years ago when they were at Disneyland. But one of the things I really like about this is that it's a really attractive account, right? And you're seeing, okay, all this really cool stuff. But then she really takes you really deeply into her scholarship via this sort of popular culture post. So here we have New Orleans Square at Disneyland, and then, wow, she's telling you, and it's true. I bet that almost nobody thinks about slavery during a Disney trip. It's not like you see it represented anywhere. But one thing I want to do with the Enchanted Archives is encourage people to see the park in a new way. So she wrote this piece about how enslaved people had a little more space on when they were working on steamboats. And it's just like absolutely amazing, but it's not what you expect, right? But let me tell you, boy, did I go back to her bio and click on that link so that I could get and read this post. I did. I thought it was really, really, really fascinating. And yeah, so that's one of the sort of interesting accounts that I follow. To give you a good idea of how some people are using stories, so this is a friend of mine, Laura McDonough, and she does a lot of work around marketing, agriculture, and food in England. And she does like these daily stories, and sometimes they're pretty long and pretty detailed, and she'll broadcast from like walks that she's taking in northern England out near her home and highlight nature. If it's a bad weather day, she'll just highlight what she's doing for work. It's pretty interesting. So Dan, what else would you like to share?
Let's see. One of the things that that I have noticed, there's a couple of accounts that I follow that have really, really long captions. And I don't tend to stay on those, to follow those accounts for very long. I think having something that you can read without having to scroll down very far on your phone, so knowing how far that caption is going to be extended down on your phone is part of it. Let's see here. Another good account that I really, really like, look for California Rice.
Oh, okay.
See if
Yep.
yeah.
Follow them.
That is one of the better of the kind of the institutional or organizational accounts that I found, and they obviously this year really focused on waterfowl and on birds, but they also do a good job of linking that to other platforms, and I think from an organizational standpoint, they're one of the better ones that I've
Right.
seen.
And look at this. I mean, this is like pretty good engagement, right? They've gotten 267 views of this little video. And I see what you're saying about their captions. Look at that. Winter rice fields come to life in Richvale with all these birds. Jim Morris video. And then they've just got a select number of hashtags. But look at, I mean, some of these, like if you do birds of Instagram, you're going to get like a kabillion sites.
Yep.
And so let's just see, what if I hit on Sac Valley, CA? Let's see what comes up. So this would be a good way to locate your post within sort of like larger hashtags. Oh, there's that video. It's really weird. I'm not used to using the desktop version, so I'm kind of
Yeah.
stymied. It's not as uh, nimble as the mobile. So let's see. Perfect. Okay. What other, are there any accounts that you'd like us to look at? All right. All right. I'm going to check the chat really quickly. Okay. Let's see. Let's see.
Lynn Sosniewski has a good UCCE account.
Yeah, let's, so you know what I'm going to do, Dan? I'm going to stop share. I'm going to let you share your screen, and then I'll go to the chat.
All right.
Okay. So Dorina has a really good question here, or comment. A barrier, maybe from my own creation, for me has been the 3 programmatic areas of my position in 2 counties: 4-H, Master Food Preserver, and FNEP. So they've got 3 different Facebook accounts, and when I post, she goes to the specific Facebook account. So when I think of Twitter or Instagram for work, I can't get my head wrapped around how to integrate. Yeah, Dorina, I've got some ideas for you on how you could integrate that. First of all, I would look at the Facebook pages and see if I could integrate the Facebook pages and maybe reduce, because depending on the size or the number of following. But I would frankly, because 4-H, Master Food Preserver, and FNEP have lots of commonalities where you could do lots of common posts, I would actually create a single Instagram. And, you could connect to the largest Facebook account. You could not connect to the Facebook account. I would create a single Instagram, because all of these programs overlap, and you could find images and posts that would appeal to all 3 of the audiences or 2 of the audiences. So yeah, and feel free to email me, and we can also set up a quick phone call to talk about that. Fernanda wants to know how to set up the 2-factor authentication. I'm glad you asked that. So what you want to do is you want to go to the settings function on your mobile device. And so if you go to the settings function, there is a section there that is all about privacy and security. And if you scroll down that menu, there is an option for 2-factor authentication, and that requires a security code, and that's how you do it. You select it. You can also opt to get backup codes that you can actually print out in case you lose your phone. So there. Okay, so Fritz would like to see other UCCE accounts. All right. And Dan, someone's suggesting that we go to the Clear account, UCB Clear. We've got Lynn Cisnowski's account here. She also does a wonderful job on Twitter.
And Lynn actually has, she's got separate accounts. She's got a personal account and a UC account, which for her works fine.
Yep, works well for her. And then, so look at, this is a really fantastic looking Instagram account here.
Yeah.
Look at that. And I have to tell you, there are, if you want to get ideas for basically science accounts to follow that are pretty good, Nat Geo is a pretty good account. I also like the NASA account. There's just a science account that's pretty good. One of the accounts that I really like is an account that's called Science Communicator, but it's actually Philosophy of Science. And it's really got some fantastic post, and it uses the platform really well. I think if you put in hashtag ag extension, you'll pull up some extension institutional accounts. Probably see, or ag, yeah, they're right there. There's some good accounts there. So, oh, I love this. Oh, a home demonstration club. See, this is like the kind of post that you could do that would really, I mean, that's pretty good engagement for, a post. That's kind of interesting. What other kinds of things are there on the ag extension post, Dan, on that hashtag?
Down here. Look at cows.
I love it. Wow. So Iowa State, and look at those hashtags there. And again, I think the point that Dan made is this is a good length sort of caption text, and that's a good number of hashtags. So Dan, if you hit the ag chat, I'll bet you pull up a ton. And by the way, there's an ag chat hashtag on Twitter because there's a weekly ag chat under that hashtag. And so you might find some correlation between Twitter and Instagram there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the questions I'll throw out, Rose, maybe you have a perspective on this. So there are some more institutional type accounts where folks will share the responsibility for posting. Like you get a week of posting on the Sheep 365 account. In your opinion, is that something that works, or is that more difficult to administer, kind of a shared account like that?
Well, I think that actually I really like the idea of shared accounts. And, some of my favorite accounts are shared accounts. And the reason I like them is that, Dan, your thing is sheep, and you are so on brand and on message with that. And it is so wonderful. If I were in a county or I were in a working group, like say natural resource advisors, something like that, the advantage of a shared account is that you'd get multiple programmatic perspectives.
Yeah.
And it also then doesn't kill any one person to have the load of doing all the social media. And remember, you can use tools like Hootsuite to schedule your Facebook and your Twitter and your Instagram. But what I have found is just with Instagram, it's just sort of easier to do it on the fly from my mobile than to schedule it on Hootsuite. And then also for Facebook now, if you have a page that's not a personal page, they have a really good scheduler for post.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like I'm now mostly using Hootsuite for Twitter. But yeah, so Fritz has asked a question: with so many possible accounts to follow, how do you curate and decide what's too much to handle, or is this a non-issue? I don't know how Dan does it, but Fritz, what I do is I like on my account to have lots of beauty. So I follow lots of like gardeners and stuff like that. But as I'm more into it, I'm more discerning. And before I follow, I go and I will actually look at posts and go, yeah, do I want this? Or are the 5 that I have enough? Is what this is adding so unique and so wonderful. So Dan, what about you?
That's kind of the same approach I take to it. I think The other thing that I look at is how authentic are the stories that somebody's trying to tell. You can tell pretty quick if it's, for example, there's a hashtag ranch life account, and it became pretty apparent after about 3 days of following them that it was all promotional pictures for Western wear. There's lots of cowboy wear, very little sheep herder clothing around there, and so I I got off of that account pretty quickly. There's another question I think kind of related about haters, especially in working with animal agriculture. And to be honest, that has not been a huge issue for me. I think part of our advantage as scientists and as extension folks is that we can help bring scientific evidence to those kinds of questions. There have, on occasion you'll get somebody that disagrees with you, and I think when it's a respectful disagreement, that's part of the value of the platform. When it's trolling, you can block that type of trolling. And I think being aware, being willing to answer hard questions is important, but also understanding that some of those aren't hard questions. They're just trying to make a point, and maybe that's not an appropriate place to spend your time.
And I have to tell you, I think Fritz had a really good question about the trolling and general negativity. I have found that less on Instagram than on Twitter.
Yeah.
And, that's just me personally. But I have to tell you, so one of my young friends, it has this really good platform called Botanical Bright. And she's a young businesswoman, and she does just all things succulent. And she made these little succulent sort of decorative things. And she actually she has a lot of followers, right? She's probably got, 25, 30,000 followers on Instagram. She does great videos. And people were really just on her about, you're killing plants and not understanding that, that these would be things that she would replant, and it was really disturbing for her. I mean, she called me, she was really rattled. And I am a big fan of the mute and block buttons. If people are just, I think it's important. And if you're doing a university account, you actually have to tolerate a certain amount of it because these are public accounts. In my personal account, I will use mute and block, but I actually haven't had to do that on Instagram because I have found it different.
I haven't either. There's kind of trolling, but then there's also some general just odd stuff that happens on all social media platforms too. I've had on Twitter in particular somebody that every time I post something has to go off on some rant about the paleo diet. I just mute that account and I don't see it anymore. But really on Instagram, that's not happened to me.
Yeah. And remember your metrics, and I really want all of you on your own. And if you have questions, you can call me to look at the Instagram insights if you're already doing an account, because you don't have to have thousands of people following your account to have good metrics. And in fact, depending on where you're located and what your program is and what your intent is with Instagram, having just a few hundred followers may be really good, and you may be getting the engagement that you need. But again, what I would do is because you can't load links in the actual post and you have to direct people out to the profile, make sure that if say that your post is about your newest blog, that you put like the red siren emoji or the pointing fingers, something that's really going to draw attention into your post, latest blog, link in bio, so that people will know to go back and connect. So are there any other questions? Dan, do you have any other insights?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I'm looking at more questions down here.
Oh, okay. So Fritz has a question about Instagram, Facebook, owning your content. I'm not sure that they own your content, but I think if you're putting it out there, you have to realize that it might get pirated, or it might get reshared or reused in ways that normally we wouldn't do it at an academic institution. Some stuff might get shared without attribution. Most of the people I encounter on social platforms are really careful about attribution and thoughtful about it. But I suppose that it could happen. But again, I think if it's your content, you need to think about what you want to do. If it's the university content, I mean, we're supposed to get that information out there. Dan, what do you think about that?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think most of the people that I interact with are really careful about attribution, and I think that should be reciprocated too. So if you're using somebody else's photograph or linking to something that somebody else did, I think attribution is important on our part too. In terms of the things that I post for my real job, my day job, I want it to get out there. As you said, Rose, I think that's part of why we do this. We want it to be out there. And I can't think of anything off the top of my head where somebody's used that information inappropriately.
Right. Okay. So one of a really quick tool before we get off, and that I want to bring to your attention, because it's a tool it's a little app that works well with Instagram, and it's called Word Swag. And so on days when I feel like I don't have a good photo in my library, what I do is I go to my Word Swag app, and what it enables me to do is it enables me to select a photo, or they'll source a photo for you from Pixabay, which is a really good place to source photos. And then you can put text on it, like a little message, and select different fonts and make a really cool inspirational post or something like that. And I have found that that app is really a good sort of add-on to Instagram. You don't need it by any means, but it has worked well in terms of producing things that I want to post on Instagram. Okay, so any more questions? You guys, I will make sure to get this sort of transcript. This is a great transcript. You guys are great. And I apologize for my slides. So Dan, anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. You guys have asked great questions, and I'll look through questions as well. Hope this was useful.
Yeah, hope it's useful too. Fill out the survey, and we're probably going to do this again live because of my slides. So thank you guys. Have a great day. Dan, thank you.
Thank you all.
See you soon.